On the seventh night of the Hungry Ghost Festival, Kowloon was alive with fire. Lanterns swayed in the thick summer air. Red paper charms fluttered on doorways. Incense burned low in little clay bowls on every sidewalk. The smoke rose in pale spirals, curling into the sky as if the whole city was whispering prayers at once. Children laughed and chased each other down the alleys. Street vendors shouted over sizzling woks. Somewhere a drumbeat echoed, steady, ancient, carrying with it a reminder that this night was not just celebration. It was survival. Because when the sun sank behind the skyline, the people of Kowloon knew the gates of the underworld cracked open. The hungry ghosts would come. The old folks spoke of them with careful words, never too loud. Spirits of the forgotten dead, the restless, the ones without families to feed them or graves to keep them. They wandered the earth starving for warmth, for life, for flesh. That was why families left offerings outside their homes. Bowls of rice, pork, fruit, cups of tea. Anything to keep the ghosts satisfied, so they would pass by without notice. Most of the time, it worked, but not always. In the heart of Kowloon, on a crooked street lined with shuttered shops, one man prepared for the night differently. He was called Uncle Chin. Nobody knew his real age. His hair was silver, his back slightly bent, but his eyes were sharp as knives. He owned a tiny shop that sold umbrellas and walking sticks, though few ever bought from him. Because everyone knew Uncle Chin wasn't just a shopkeeper. When the hungry ghosts came too close, when the offerings failed, when the shadows pressed against the doors of Kowloon, Uncle Chin stepped out. And the city held its breath. Hanging by the door of his shop was a single umbrella, black paper stitched with golden thread. It looked fragile, ordinary. Its paper was faded, the handle worn smooth by decades of use. But when Uncle Chin held it in his hands, it was no ordinary umbrella. With it, he cut through shadows. With it, he kept Kowloon safe. Some whispered that the umbrella was blessed by a wandering monk. Others said it was cursed, stolen from the underworld itself. Only Uncle Chin knew the truth, and he never spoke of it. That night, as the lanterns swayed and the prayers rose with the smoke, Uncle Chin stepped outside. The air grew colder, heavier. The laughter of the children faded. Even the stray dogs that roamed the alleys lowered their tails and vanished into the dark. Uncle Chin could feel it in his bones. The gates had opened. At first it was only a sound, a scraping, soft and low, like fingernails dragging across stone. Then the shadows thickened. Figures pulled themselves free from the corners of the street, their bodies thin and twisted, faces stretched with eternal hunger, mouths filled with jagged teeth. The hungry ghosts had come. Dozens of them. They crawled along the ground, reaching with clawed hands. Their eyes glowed faintly, pale green in the dark. And though the offerings burned on the sidewalks, the ghosts ignored them. They wanted more. They wanted the living. A shutter slammed shut. A baby cried in the distance. The people of Kowloon locked their doors, whispered their prayers, and waited. Uncle Chin alone stepped into the middle of the street. He lifted the umbrella. The golden threads shimmered faintly in the firelight. The ghosts hissed. With a flick of his wrist, Uncle Chin opened the umbrella. The air shifted. A low hum filled the alley, deep and powerful, like the sound of wind rushing through bamboo forests. The golden threads blazed, bright as fire. He swung it forward. A wave of light slashed through the front line of ghosts. Their bodies shrieked. tore apart, dissolved into smoke. On Uncle Chin's hand, faint golden scars appeared, glowing just for a moment before fading into his skin. One line for every spirit banished. His hand already carried hundreds. Tonight, it would carry more. The ghosts howled and surged forward. Their teeth snapped. Their claws scraped against stone. Uncle Chin spun the umbrella in a wide circle, light flashing with every turn. The air cracked. Ghosts scattered, burned, dissolved. But still they came. Dozens more crawled out of the alleys, from the rooftops, from the shadows between lantern flames. The street swarmed with them, and for the first time in many years, Uncle Chin felt the faint weight of doubt. The battle had only begun, and in the distance, past the smoke, past the ruins at the edge of the city, something larger stirred. Something older, watching, waiting. The ghosts did not stop. For every one Uncle Chin struck down, two more dragged themselves into the street. Their jaws cracked open wider than human mouths should go. Their fingers scraped against the stone, leaving trails of frost. The air turned sharp, biting. The lanterns along the street sputtered and dimmed. Kowloon was being swallowed by shadow. Uncle Chin moved carefully, his steps slow but steady. He swung the umbrella like a blade, each sweep carving light through the darkness. The spirits shrieked as the golden thread tore them apart, their shapes unraveling into smoke. His hand burned with new scars of light, glowing for an instant before sinking into his skin. The marks climbed up his wrist, his forearm, his elbow. His entire arm looked as if it had been etched by fire. Still, he did not stop. From behind shuttered windows, the people watched in silence. Mothers held their children close. Old men whispered prayers. Everyone in Kowloon knew the truth. Without Uncle Chin, the city would not last the night. But the ghosts were changing. Some no longer dissolved when the umbrella struck them. They staggered back, their bodies shaking, then lunged again, fiercer, hungrier. Their eyes burned brighter, green flames flickering in their sockets. Uncle Chin narrowed his eyes. Something was feeding them. He caught a glimpse between the smoke, toward the far end of the street, beyond the ruined gate of the old city wall. A shadow stood there, not like the others, taller, still, watching. Its form shifted as though made of smoke and bone. Even from a distance, Uncle Chin felt its gaze pierce through him like cold steel. His grip tightened on the umbrella. The ordinary ghosts were only pawns. That thing was their master. The battle raged on. Ghosts leapt from the rooftops, clawing at Uncle Chin's shoulders. He swung the umbrella upward, light bursting through the air, sending them crashing into smoke. Another surged from the ground itself, pulling itself free from the stone like water seeping through cracks. Uncle Chin slammed the umbrella down, light striking it into ash. But the weight of them pressed closer. Every swing of the umbrella grew heavier. Every scar on his arm burned hotter. And all the while the shadow at the gate remained still, watching. At last, the sound came. Not a hiss, not a scream. A voice. Deep, ancient. It rolled through the streets like thunder. You guard them well, old man. But how long can you fight? Your flesh weakens. Your tool breaks. And when you fall, this city will be mine. The other ghosts froze at the sound, bowing their heads like soldiers before a king. Uncle Chin steadied his breath. This was no wandering spirit. This was the one the old temple stories whispered about. The Ghost King. A chill crawled down Uncle Chin's spine. He had fought hundreds of ghosts. He had never faced this. The Ghost King lifted its head, smoke twisting into the shape of a skull. Empty sockets burned with fire. Soon, your scars will cover more than your hand. They will consume you. And when you are gone, no one will stand between me and their hunger. The voice rattled the windows, shook the lanterns, made the children inside cry out in fear. Uncle Chin planted his feet. He raised the umbrella high. His voice was steady, though his chest burned. As long as I breathe, you will not touch this city. The Ghost King laughed. It was a sound like a landslide, deep and endless. And with that laugh, the ghosts surged forward all at once. The street vanished under claws, teeth, and smoke. Uncle Chin spun the umbrella, golden light tearing through the swarm, but the weight was too much. They pressed from every side, dragging him down. The people inside their homes covered their ears, unable to bear the sound of the shrieking. Outside, the old man fought alone, and in the distance, the Ghost King's shadow grew taller. The swarm dragged him down. Claws raked across his chest, tearing cloth and skin. Teeth snapped at his arms. Smoke filled his lungs, choking him, smothering him. For a heartbeat, Uncle Chin thought this was it, that he would vanish under their hunger, and Kowloon would fall. But his grip tightened around the umbrella. He slammed it against the ground. A burst of golden light exploded outward, throwing the ghosts back in a single wave. Windows shattered. Roof tiles broke loose. The very air trembled. The street cleared, littered only with ash and the stench of smoke. But the umbrella, the golden thread along its ribs, flickered weakly. The fabric tore in two places. The weapon that had carried him through years of battle was breaking. Uncle Chin's heart sank. The Ghost King stepped forward. Each stride echoed like thunder. The other spirits slithered aside, clearing a path for their master. The shadow grew sharper with every step, until it towered above Uncle Chin, its form twisting with bone, smoke, and endless hunger. Its voice was no longer distant. It spoke directly, its words rumbling through the air. "You fought well, old man, but your time is over. You have hidden behind that toy long enough. Without it, you are nothing." Uncle Chin raised the umbrella once more, though his arms shook from the weight of it. His scars burned, glowing bright across his arm. The Ghost King reached forward. Its clawed hand closed around the umbrella, gripping it with impossible strength. Uncle Chin pulled back, but the shadow's power was immense. With a single snap, the shaft of the umbrella cracked. The golden light sputtered. The cloth tore. The umbrella, the shield of the city, shattered in his hands. The silence that followed was worse than the screams. The people behind their doors gasped. Children began to cry. Even the lesser ghosts trembled, as though feeding on the despair. The Ghost King's burning eyes flared brighter. "See? Your weapon is gone. Your city is mine." Uncle Chin staggered, staring at the broken pieces in his hands. For a moment, despair clawed at his chest. But then, he looked at the scars that ran along his arm. The burns, the light, the pain. The umbrella had never been the true source of power. It had only carried his will. The strength had always been his. He dropped the broken handle. His fingers curled into a fist, glowing faintly. The light spread across his arm, burning brighter, climbing to his shoulder, his chest, his whole body. The Ghost King paused, its flames flickering uncertainly. Uncle Chin's voice rang through the street, stronger than it had all night. I don't need the umbrella to protect them. I only need myself. The Ghost King roared, lunging forward, its massive shadow stretching over the buildings. Uncle Chin stepped into the charge. Light met darkness. The battle for Kowloon began. The Ghost King struck first. Its claws came down like falling towers, shattering stone, splintering wood. The street shook as if the earth itself feared him. But Uncle Chin did not move back. He raised his glowing arm, catching the blow. The impact sent cracks through the ground, yet the old man stood firm. Light burst from his scars, burning against the shadow's touch. The Ghost King howled, pulling its hand away, smoke rising like steam where the light had scorched it. The city watched in silence. Behind shuttered windows, families held their breath. Lantern flames flickered weakly, but none went out. Even the smallest child sensed it. This was the fight that would decide everything. The Ghost King spread its arms, the darkness stretching to the rooftops, smothering the lanterns, drowning every corner of Kowloon in black. Dozens of ghostly shapes swirled within its body, faces of the hungry dead, all crying, all reaching. You cannot fight me forever, the king thundered. You are old, mortal, brittle. I am endless. Uncle Chin's voice was calm. Endless hunger is still hunger, and hunger can be starved. He closed his eyes, drawing in one long, steady breath. The light within him pulsed. It was no longer just in his arm. It spread through his chest, his heart, his lungs. His whole body glowed like a lantern burning against the night. He knew what it meant. The scars were not power. They were warnings. Every use had taken a piece of him. And now, to finish this, he would have to give all of it. He opened his eyes. I offer what I have left, he whispered, though his words carried through every street. Not for me, but for them. He stepped forward, straight into the heart of the shadow. The Ghost King roared, swallowing him in smoke, wrapping its claws around him, crushing. But Uncle Chin did not scream. He raised his glowing hand and pressed it against the monster's chest. The light erupted, not like the bursts before. This time, it was a flood. Golden fire poured from his body, splitting the darkness apart, searing through the thousands of faces that screamed inside the Ghost King. The shadows burned away one by one, until only the king's skull face remained, shrieking in rage and terror. You will burn with me, it howled. Uncle Chin's voice was steady, even as the light consumed him. No, I will burn for them. The explosion shook the city. Windows shattered. Doors blew open. The black smoke scattered into the sky like ashes in the wind. And then, silence. The night was clear. The lanterns burned bright again. The air was still. Kowloon was safe. Where Uncle Chin had stood, there was no body. Only a single mark burned into the stone, a handprint glowing faintly with golden light. The people crept out of their homes, one by one. They looked to the handprint and to the empty sky where the Ghost King had vanished. and they knew. Their protector was gone, but his sacrifice lived on in the scars of the city itself. In the weeks that followed, the festival returned. Children laughed, lanterns swung, offerings were placed at the gates, as they always had been. Yet whenever the wind blew at night, the people swore they could still hear the faint sound of a man's voice, calm, steady, reassuring. As long as you breathe, this city will stand. And so, Uncle Chin became more than a man. He became a legend, a guardian etched not just in stone, but in memory. And though the Ghost King was gone, whispers lingered, that deep in the shadows of other cities, other hungers still stirred, waiting.